Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. We're going to wait another minute or so while people are still logging on. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for our Preparing for Paperless Audits and Sage Intact webinar. My name is Kristen with JMT. I'm just going to go over some housekeeping notes. So if you have any questions, please submit your questions in the Q&A box on Zoom. We'll save all the questions for the end, but we will be sure to answer them. And today's recording and slides will be emailed to you after the webinar is finished. This is a CPE accredited webinar, so if you would like to earn 1 CPE credit for this, you will need to answer 3 out of the 4 polling questions that will come up throughout the webinar, complete the survey that will come up after the webinar is ended, and stay on for the duration of the webinar. If you have any technical issues, please be sure to email me at kfredericks@jmtconsulting.com, or you can just put in the Q&A box and I'll be sure to check it. And with that, I will turn it over to Dougie to get started.
Greetings, everybody. I hope you guys are not in the path of the storm that's coming. So before we get started, I just want to remind some of you some of you may not be familiar with some of our services. We not only implement and support Sage Intacct and MIP, but also with budgeting software like the Sage Budgeting and Planning and Martis and Vena and some of the others. So if you're interested in some other services, just let us know. And the big thing I want to mention is Innovate next year is going to be in Nashville. We always have such a blast at Innovate, and you always learn so much. And so we have some early bird discounts. Please take advantage of those. And when you register, be sure to mention the JMT staff member who referred you to it, because we have an internal contest going and I want to win. No, I'm kidding. But anyway, that's all about Innovate. It'll be fun and it'll be nice to have it in Nashville, a change of scenery. With that, I want to switch over to the topic at hand about preparing for paperless audit and Sage Intacct. I don't know about you, but when the word audit comes up, it's always kind of feeling of dread. For those of you that aren't aware of this, I did used to also be a client. I had to deal with auditors for 20 years. Yes, I'm dating myself, and a lot of this comes from that experience and some additional stuff. And so today's the objectives, some of the points I wanted to get across is we got to have an appropriate mindset to have a really good audit. With Intacct, Sage Intacct, it is very easy to include ways for the auditor to be included for a paperless audit, which really saves a lot of times. And I want to identify some of those ways. I also want to cover a few key controls that every auditor always looks for. And I also want to focus on some dashboards that you can create that will help the audit every year. So you don't have to update it every year. I mean, with the whole dashboard components, just the data. We'll also mention some tips and tricks for the dashboards to be very efficient and effective, and some of the best practices. So those are some of the objectives of today's session. So in to dive right in, we have to prepare, so what do we need to do to prepare for our annual audit? Well, the first thing is we literally, and I had to do this, we literally had to adjust our mind space. We have to remember a lot of stuff. And I never thought of this really before, but our mental space, that's a really precious commodity, and our brains have limits. And so we need to adjust our mindset so we can handle with all of the detail, especially in an audit. There's so much detail that you have to deal with and that the auditor asks for that it can get very overwhelming. The next one is the temporary pain is well worth the wealth of benefits later. So what I'm referring here is we may have to do some prep work, right? We need to set up the report so that we can put it on the dashboard, or we may need to set up specific attachment scenarios so that we have all the information gathered. So the actual setup may be a little bit painful and painstaking, but it's so worth the outcome because it'll smooth things down the road. The third one is you definitely need to go slow to go fast. We all are working very, very fast, very many different directions, some faster than others. We need to slow down so that we don't make mistakes in the setup, and we are thorough and we cover all of the points so that we don't mess up, and so that we can put all the necessary building blocks in place and don't miss anything. Because if we miss something, it'll just slow it down further. Okay? If we do all this prep, the audits will be non-hectic. And I learned that. I mean, I still remember very vividly the very first audit I had to go through and what a painful experience that was because I was so green. And by year 20, it was a piece of cake, right? And so I'm like, okay, what made the difference? And so I just did a mental review of all that, and the prep, how much prep you do and how you pay attention and all that. We're going to cover some of those areas that you will be able to have a non-hectic audit experience. And bottom line is we have to admit that some of our current processes do create stress, right? And with Sage Intacct, you have the ability to change some of those processes using Intacct. So the first thing we want to do is we now have Sage Intacct. Let's get the auditor on board. How do we do that? Well, first of all, and I misspelled accessibility. Sorry, didn't catch that. With Sage Intacct, are you aware that you can give the auditor an Intacct license? It would be the employee user license, which is read only. If you give your auditor an employee user license, they can do their own research. They can log in whenever whenever they want to. It'll increase efficiency. It'll reduce the audit charges, the ones they charge you. They can log in anytime from anywhere as long as they have internet, and they can do their own reviews. I still remember having to go in the paper files and pull up backup documentation for accounts payable bills. Well, they can do that all themselves. And especially, and we will cover some dashboard ideas that you can set up for auditors. If you show them dashboards and if you make dashboards available when they first log in, it'll make things so much smoother for them, especially because then an employee user license, you're already getting that with 10 packs, right? They're very inexpensive. And if you give the auditor one or two of those licenses, that really solves a lot. Let's and so next question I always wanted to know is what specifically is the auditor looking for? And whether they're in person or they do it remotely and do a lot of their own stuff, they're looking for backup documentation, right? They're looking for what internal controls do you have in place and are they effective? They're looking at analytical procedures, and what data are you collecting and how are you collecting it and where are you collecting it? So the other point of what is the auditor looking for, it's basically communication. Are you aware, let me rephrase it this way. Are you aware that you can use Sage Intacct as a communication hub for the audit? So one of the things, and the areas I'm going to mention, you may not be aware of, because when we first implement, we're not really focusing on these areas, because we're focusing on making sure that you can write bills, that you can send out checks, that you can receive AR payments or cash receipts. We're not really focusing on some of this extra stuff in quote unquote. The first one is checklists. Are you aware of that you have capabilities of tracking checklists in Intact? Checklists are found under Company, the All tab. And if you don't see them on that tab, then make sure you have the permissions to view them. Checklists allow you to set up checklists, exactly as the name implies, that help you lay out all the steps of an audit, what you need to cover, what they're requesting for, and you can assign people and you can keep track of it that way. Okay, so that's checklist. You can track target dates and communicate status, and you can make copies of the checklist for next year's audits. So you don't always have to reinvent the wheel. You can duplicate, just like you can duplicate bills or journal entries, and you can use the checklist for next year. The other method is collaborate. Collaborate is also in the production databases, your real live databases of Intact. For those of you familiar with Salesforce Chatter, it's that same type of tool. And you have the ability to use Collaborate by putting notes on specific records, by putting additional attachments on the records besides the normal attachment field. And you can use all that with Collaborate. And if the auditor is also a Sage Intact user, whatever type of license, employee license is what we recommend, they also have the ability to communicate back and forth. So for example, I'm going to use accounts payable bill as an example. If you have a bill that's really out of the ordinary, use Collaborate to add the explanation of why this is out of the ordinary, so the auditor can see it and they can put their own notes on it. As an Intact user with an employee license, they have the ability to communicate back and forth, and that communication is visible within Intact on the record, and you can also put it on a dashboard. And then, of course, auditors wouldn't have gone through Intact training, right? So there's the new training videos that's on the home screen of Intact that will allow you to point them in that direction, say, here's where you can find how to enter a bill, how to look up a payment, and they can do their own mini how-to trainings just watching those videos. All right, the next slide. And if you have questions, by the way, just put them in the Q&A on the chat. Okay, what are some other preparation? I'm very down to earth. I'm very practical. So here are some ideas that you can use. We have attachments, right? So we've been focusing on, yeah, I just want attachment for bills or for receipts or for journal entries or things like that. So here's a thought. What if at the beginning of each year, you create attachment folders for the audits? So you could have, like, the parent folder is audit, a subfolder is let's say 2024, 2025, whatever. And in that subfolder, you can put board minutes, you can put specific deliverables, etc. Use a consistent file naming convention. And then, for example, if you have board minutes, go ahead and upload the board minutes to that attachment folder. What you can then do is you can include those attachments as a component on a dashboard. So as you have board minutes, I know my auditor always asks for board minutes. You have them right there on the dashboard. The component is already there. All the auditor has to do is go to, like, okay, audit 2024, and they'll see all the board minutes right there from the dashboard. Just a thought. The other thing is, put your backup documentations on the records. If it's a bill, make a copy of a bill and attach it. If it's an invoice, make a copy of the backup documentation and attach it. It can be single or multiple files per attachment, etc. You get the idea. Require it. So, and I'll show you in a little bit with smart rules and smart events, what you have the ability to do. I'm still surprised going through all the trainings, how many people don't require backup documentation. If you don't have the backup documentation, then the auditor could potentially ask for you to look for those in paper format. So do the backups on the documents. Use that attachment field to upload all the backups so that the auditor so I can't talk yet, sorry, so that the auditor can do their own research. I just mentioned the audit dashboard, and I'll show you some more examples in a little bit. On the audit dashboard, you now have the ability to link attachments to a dashboard. That functionality came out a little over a year ago. Some of you may not be aware of it. You can also attach regular reports, which has been long-standing functionality. You identify the financial reports or whatever standard reports. Like if they want to see a general ledger report of all the activity, memorize it, stick it on the dashboard. They'll have visibility to it. And you can even add filters to some of those dashboards so they can run their own reports. We already talked in the audit notes, of course. You can even put the audit notes from last year on there. We already talked about the auditor access. Read-only permissions is automatic with the employee user ID, and you only want to give them security rights to those areas you want to give them visibility to. But best of all, I like this, and so we're going to go through this acronym, take charge. You got to take charge. Make sure if you take control and you take charge, it'll make things so much easier. And we're going to walk through each one of these points. And let's start with transparency builds trust. If you're open with the auditor, if you don't try to hide anything, they'll trust you because they'll know that you immediately will come to them if there is a change. If you make a mistake and you own up to it, they will trust you more and more. If you proactively research the impact of new accounting pronouncements, procedures, whatever, they will thank you for it because that means they don't have to do it, right? Especially with us being nonprofits, we have to do a little bit more research on some of these rules and regs, as I used to call them, and take charge, and be open with the auditor. The next one is the A for take, assign, plan, and develop resources. Who is expected to be part of the audit? Not everybody has to be part of the audit, and use those audit deliverables that the auditor asks for or that you are able to put on the dashboard as a learning tool for your staff members. But very important, as they learn this, make sure you review their work before giving it to the auditors, because you don't want to give it to the auditors and then it's full of mistakes just because the staff member was still learning and you didn't provide enough guidance on that. And share the work, share the work with others to build strength. I call it divide and conquer. The more people that know the responsibilities or the tasks, the better, so that you're not dependent on just one person. Come on, mouse. Here we go. The K for know your risks. Formulate a risk assessment, and review it every year. And ask yourself this. This is what really helped me. If I were an auditor of my organization, what data would I focus on? Where would I focus? What area? Look at last year's audit. Where did the auditor focus last year? What financial statements did they ask for most frequently, and what were they looking for on those financial statements? And based on last year, what's changed this year, and where did we have issues this year? Ask yourself those hard questions, and those are the areas that you need to then focus on and make sure that's ready for the auditor. The next one is embrace the audit. And I briefly mentioned this before. Audits can be very painful. I know that from firsthand experience. I'm very glad to be on this side of the coin, But audits also provide a learning experience for all staff members involved. And that is so true. You learn so much through audits just by finding the answers to requests the auditors make, and then set the expectations, set your expectations realistically so there's no surprises. And if you do that, you will have a clean audit. And then I can't stress this one enough: communicate, 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 communicate. Be accessible. There's nothing worse than trying to get a hold of somebody and you can't get a hold of them. As some of my clients know, sorry about that, guys. Um, we have to understand that schedules are stressful. Allow a grace period, but they make sure you get back to the auditors and respond to them when they give you a request. And be very clear in your response. Don't try to sugarcoat it or something. Just be very black and white. Be blunt if you have to, so that there's no room for interpretation. And if you can anticipate the auditor requests, great. Like if you know that every year they're going to ask for these samples, like 50 samples of AP bills or whatever, be ready for them. And then any audit communications, be sure to save them so you have some backups. We covered this a little bit also. Harness the H in charge, harness the learnings, review last year's audit. What was the good, what was the bad, and what was the ugly, as I like to say. And when in doubt, ask for the auditor's objective. They'll be happy to talk to you and explain it. And then this is the one that's really good: audit yourself. As you review reconciliations like the bank rec or whatever, think like an auditor. Look at it from the lens of an auditor. And even though it's just your staff member, and really self-criticize, so to speak. Go through in some sample transactions that the type that your auditor usually samples. If you have aged reconciling items, clear them out. Real life examples: just in the past 2 months with bank reconciliation trainings, I've seen reconciling items that have been on the books since 2007 and 2008. That's a little ridiculous. Those should have been cleared out. This is outstanding items on the bank rec that old. Those should have been cleared out. Clear them out, bring everything up to date. And I'll move on to the next slide with that. Okay. And then it's always good to review and revise documentation. It's amazing how fast our processes change. It's amazing to see things change, right? The only constant in life is change. And periodically review and revise and update documentation. We internally have to do this a lot, almost every year. We look at our documentation and update it and revise it. And sometimes you just get behind because real work does take precedence many times. Review your accounting and business policies on an annual basis, and make sure, and notice a theme here: to review audit reports and communications from prior year. It makes a difference because we forget. We get the audit report, we reread it, we deal with whatever the action that has to be taken, but we forget. And so review it so you don't forget about it. Hang on a second, I gotta move my Zoom. Okay. Okay. This one: gather audit deliverables. What are some new standards that you now have to meet? There's rules, regulations, laws, whatever, are constantly changing. What are some of the new standards? What are some changes in the organization? Just think of staff changes. What if it's key staff changes? There are some major staff changes going on in our clients and also internally with us. And keep track of those changes and make them visible to the auditor. Automate your reports. Like if the auditor wants to see quarterly reports or monthly reports just throughout the year, certain ones, group those together and then schedule them so that you don't have to take the time to run them. If you don't know how to do that, please notify us. We'll be happy to schedule some training sessions to show you how to do that. You can schedule any report in Intact. If it's a financial report, it's a straight schedule. If it's a regular standard report, like a module specific report, if you memorize it, you can schedule it. And then you also have the ability to group all of them together if you want to. You can make an auditor bundle just like you can a board bundle. Another deliverable is new types of transactions, agreements, relationships that you're building with other organizations or partnerships. The auditor needs to be aware of those. Your reconciliations. For example, your subledger reconciliations. There's a lot of you who don't reconcile accounts payable subledger and accounts receivable subledger on a monthly basis. You can put a month end or a reconciliation dashboard together so that you have the AP ledger, AP aging, and the general ledger report for your AP subledger control number all together on the same dashboard. So at a moment's notice, you can see, even on a daily basis, whenever you log into the dashboard, you'll see, are you in balance or are you not in balance? And you can do that with all of your subledgers, AP, AR, or whatever. It's painful to have to go back and help our clients reconcile these subledgers when it was never done from the get-go. We now have certain processes in place so we ensure that that is done. But that's a big one. Notations. Are you aware that on financial reports, you can now add notes as a column? Like a lot of times when we were doing financial reports in Excel, we could put little notes on the side. Well, you can do the same thing on financial reports now. It's a column. You have to add notations. And again, if you would like to know how to do that, let us know and we'll set up a short training session with you guys to show you how to do that. But notations help explain on the report. So if the auditor is looking at a report and there's something out of the ordinary on the report, like it draws their attention to it and they're going to ask you for it. If there's already a note on the report for it, when they run the report, they're not going to ask you the question. So you're not going to be delayed, right? You're not going to be interrupted with your work. The auditor can find out their own information. Okay, enough of that. And then the big one is take charge. And that would be establish expectation. That's the E in charge. Establish expectations and timelines. Who are the main point of contact on both sides, on your staff side and on the auditor side? Because auditor staff also changes. The other thing that really helps is if your staff members knows the priority of audit work, sorry, and regular work. So which takes priority in what scenario? And then the create internal checklists, that it refers again to the Intact checklist. If you have your internal checklist, then you don't have to try to remember, okay, what else was there? It's all written. And you can be extremely detailed on the internal checklists or keep it as high level as you wish. And if there is an issue, if you have an issue resolution plan in place, that will really, really help out as well. Okay, so that's take charge, the acronym take charge of little areas, little points that really help smooth things out. Now, what are some of the key controls that are checked by the auditor? And so that's what we're going to cover next. What are certain things that the auditor is looking for that were your data in Intact can be helpful? So one of the big ones is they always look for They look at staff members first. Is there a division of duty? What are, if a staff member is in a certain position, what user role and what permissions do they have? And so are you aware that there is a user roles and permissions report? This report will, like all of these reports, and I'll show you on the next slide, you're going to see 4 audit reports, and I'll show you that within Intact too, that are already in Intact under custom reports. One report is under company admin, and the other 3 are under custom reports, or is it 4? I don't remember. I'll show you. But all you have to do is run a report. And again, if you memorize it, you can put it on a dashboard and the auditor can review do their own user roles and permissions report review without having to bug you about running the report. The administrator role there, so another key area that the auditors are looking for is, okay, if you're the administrator, what are you allowed to do and what are you not allowed to do? Like currently, the full admin role in Intact has access to everything, including printing checks, right? So printing checks or doing payments or receiving payments in is an area. Anything to do with money is an area that the auditors really focus on because they're always looking for fraud. And so make sure you have that division of duty on the administrator role, whatever your administrative staff member is doing, make sure they have that division of duty. There should be specific roles for admins. With every new implementation, we do give you a preloaded list of user roles that you can use as templates. It's been my experience that there's usually some tweaking involved because everybody has different scenarios depending on the number of staff members and what their duties are and the division of duties. So use the roles that if you go under company administration tab and roles, use those roles as templates and make them your own. If you need help with setting up security roles, let us know. We will be happy to help you with that with a training session. You guys can do it, but sometimes you just need a little help. You can also review the audit logs, for monthly changes, and the next slide will show you the audit logs that you can see. And this audit log can be a report or it can be the audit on a specific transaction. So for the specific transaction, every transaction, if you go under the More Actions button, you see the audit trail. I don't know if you've paid attention to it or not, but Intact is including more and more detail on that audit trail, and they're still going through and with every release, there is more detail being added to different audit log areas. And some of them you can even see the before value, the field, the before value, and the after value on the specific transaction. And I'll show you a report where you can actually see that on a report as well. And I already mentioned excluding specific rights, for the administrator role, because you want to make sure you divide and conquer. And oops, sorry. The role stacking. So Intact does allow role stacking. So one person could have multiple roles, which is really nice because if that person's position or responsibilities change, you can remove a role, you can add a different role. It's very easy to just add and remove roles rather than having to redo the whole security setup per user. So make use of the role stacking. So here are the audit reports. We have the audit event report. That's the one that's found under the company module, the admin tab, and then in the history and reports section. That is very useful for tracking changes to standard transactions and records. So basically, you can pick the object or the area of Intact that you wish to track, and you can filter it by user, and it'll give you has something been added or edited or deleted, or I don't remember all the choices, but it's basic actions. And it also allows you can drill down to the actual records, whether it's a transaction or record, like a vendor or a customer. It doesn't give you a lot of the specific details, so like the before or the after, but it's more on here's the primary action that has been taken. The audit history report by object data. So whenever Intact says object data, it refers to the area of Intact where the data is being housed. So the next three reports, including this one, is found in the reports module under custom reports. And I'll run some of that so you can get an idea. So all three of those, well, actually all four of them, use the same criteria that you can use for filtering. You can do it based on date or based on user or based on object or based on the action. What's different is the type of data that's being displayed. And so that's the difference between them. If you want to see the detail of, okay, this record was changed, what was the value before and what was the value after, you want the audit history by user report. That one, you can say, okay, if I'm doing AP bill, let's filter by Dougie's user ID and let's see what work she did this week. And so you can see that and you can see what changes I made and what the specific changes were. So that's the audit history by user. And this audit history report also gives you the before and the after, but it also gives you additional detail fields. And so I want you to play with those reports. I'm going to quickly jump over to Intact and show you, because not all of them may have been installed in your database. So if you go to reports and you go to custom reports in Intact, I'm going to filter by the word audit because I have a lot of extra reports. We did this one. So there's the audit history by object, audit history by user, audit report, and permission changes audit trail. This is one we created. And you're like, well, I don't see these audit reports. They come in very handy. If you don't see them, find somebody that has access to, where's my platform? Oh, right here. Find somebody that has access to platform services and then go to custom packages and then go package library, and you'll see them listed all here. See, here's the audit history by object data area report. Any report, and you can filter by audit here. Let's just see audit. I always use the wildcard first because I never know. Here it is. If I want to install this, it should give me, okay, it installed it. Just click on the word install and it'll put it in the custom reports screen. That's all you need to do. If you don't remember this, I don't have this in the slides. So if you don't remember it, let us know and we'll remind you of where it can be done. Okay, but those are the custom reports. Hang on a second. Now going back to, and I just lost it. Sorry, it got me out of there. Now reports, custom reports, and then if you don't see it right away, refresh your browser window. When you run these reports, I'm going to click done. It's not letting me go back. Hang on a second. Here we go. All right, let me do audit. I'll pick on the ones that start with audit. When you run these reports, you have to click run. And you'll have the from and to dates. What's different about these dates is when you do, let me do 06/01 2024. When I put the date in, I actually have to put the slashes in, which is not normally what you have to do on regular reports. On regular reports, Let's do August 08. Oops, too many O's. 08/31/2024. On regular reports, you can just put 8/31. You can pick your object area, right? Here's all the choices. Some of the hard part could be, what do I need to look for? So if I'm looking, because it's a lot of different things, and if you're not sure, just pull everything. I'm going to just add all. Add all? Maybe not. Do I need to highlight it? Nope. Okay, it just took a while. I'm going to click done. Let's see. The action is, did they log on? Was there activity? Was it create? Was it delete? Was it modify? Was it user action? What was it? There's a lot of choices here. Play with them, right? So I'm going to do access, activity, create, delete, modify, workflow. Let's see what I get. And I'm going to pick on myself. I don't remember what all I did, but I'm just going to pick on myself just so you get an idea of what data is here. Oh, bad request. Okay, I'm not valid. Sorry. I didn't, that's not good. If I, let's remove them all. You don't have to fill anything out. You can just leave everything blank and it'll pull from everybody. Come on. Let me remove everybody. I just froze my screen. Cool. I'm going to just exit because I don't want to waste your time. It will work. I just messed something up. That's all. Try it without any of the filters and then slowly work the filters in. I always have to be careful with my webinar database because there's very little data and I tend to use overkill. But anyway, that's these reports. Okay. So of course I had to have a mess up. Let's talk about smart events or smart rules. You may or may not have heard us talk about that, but Intact has smart rules and smart events available. This is a great explanation of the difference between the two. So the smart rule will prevent something or warn you in the change of data. Okay, so like for example, a lot of our clients, they're enforcing the fact that there has to be an attachment before a transaction can be saved as or posted. If there is no attachment, it won't let them out. It won't let them save it because internally the org said everything has to have an attachment. And so they've asked us to create a smart rule, and we create the smart rule and we'll ask you what all the attachment fields you want this to apply to. We'll put it in place and it will prevent you from saving anything if there is no attachment. The smart event allows you to send automatic notifications of if there's some kind of a change. So if you want activity to happen, but you want to be notified about that change, that can be set up. Okay. So for example, if certain people enter a journal entry and the status is draft, then so-and-so has to be notified because they need to review it and they need to post it. Because sometimes with journal entries, you need multiple approvers and a smart event can be put into place to do that. Now, when you want a smart rule or smart event to be put into place, there will be a fee for it because it's complicated to set up. But that complication is worth the effort because it saves you a lot of guesswork and a lot of manual looking up data to see what has happened. Okay, if you need more information, again, come talk to us about it and we'll dive deeper into it. Auditor dashboards. My favorite topic is auditor dashboards. Here are some ideas for auditor dashboards. Here are some possibilities, and all of these can be on separate dashboards and then grouped together, or you can mix and match on dashboards. So like checklists. I've mentioned checklists before. If my Intact unfreezes, I'll show you checklists. I had a webinar on it last year on checklists, and so I'll be happy to show it to you again. Checklists let you assign tasks. You track due dates and progress completion. You can even have a checklist generate an email. So, and if somebody marks it complete, somebody else will be notified that it's been marked complete, that kind of thing. Attachments, bank statements, board minutes. I already mentioned board minutes before, annual reports, etc. That can all be put on either attachments on the dashboard or as backup documentation on the actual transaction. Analytics, trial balance. We also, I didn't mention the dimension balances report. The dimension balances report can be set up like a trial balance with all of the applicable dimension codes, because a trial balance, the out of the box trial balance, only shows general ledger accounts. We have dimensions that where we're tracking balances by the dimension account string, right? The GL and the dimension string. So you can set up a dimension balances report and put it on, memorize it and put it on a dashboard that really helps the auditor out. System records, approvals, allocations, checking accounts, all of that can be put on dashboards, and also internal and external links. So it's called Smart Links, the components on the dashboard, and you can link websites. You can link, oh, I forgot the name of it, where you have your own internal area where you upload all of your, sorry, my mind just totally went blank on the naming convention of that folder, but it's online, but it's internally, it's within your network. And that's where you have a lot of the like policy documentation and things like that. I'll think of it at midnight tonight. Some ideas, right? Dashboard possibilities. Another one is, what if there's certain areas like you're dealing very heavily with grants and the auditor always pays attention to the grants, well, do a grant specific dashboards. Do include revenue recognition if you want reporting and setup. Add especially if you have the billing module, include that as a dashboard component, because you can do shortcut links to various screens with an intact too. That's another area. Here's more detailed. On that last one, you can set up special reports. You can provide links via smart links to grant sites and things like that. So that's just a few examples of the dashboard choices in Intact. I'd love to talk to you and help you with setting up an auditor specific dashboard and point you in the right direction, because everybody has slightly different needs depending on the type of organization you are. And so let us know. We'd love to help you set it up. Let me show you I don't know if I can let me get out of here. Let's go reload. I want to show you checklists. Hang on a second. Here we go. I need to go back to my webinar. Webinar. Good, it unstuck. Maybe not. I'm just happy I still have internet. So checklists. If you go to company all, you should have checklists and assignments. Under setup, you're going to have checklist options, checklist categories, status, assignment categories, and assignment status. So when you set up a checklist, I'm going to just go straight to checklists. For example, this is the month end close. It's a little old, but it's still marked in progress. I want to view it. So you can think of it as you have a piece of notebook paper, and here's check step number 1, number 2, or bullet point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever you want. You can name it. Well, in order to do the bank rec, I need to make sure that accounts payable is closed, right? All the checks are written and things like that, and that it's reconciled. I want to make sure that the bank, this is for the month end close. I want to make sure that the bank accounts are reconciled. I want to make sure that accounts receivable subledger is closed and reconciled, and you can do all these choices. So if I click on the assignment name, I always want to see the hyperlink. So if I click on the assignment name, then you can see, and if I click edit, you'll see, let me edit so you can see the different fields. You can give it a category. I haven't come up with any categories. You can come up with your own categories like this is for the audit, or this is for accounting or finance, or all sorts of stuff. You can come up with an assignment ID. That doesn't, it should mean something to you. It doesn't matter what you come up with. Who is the person that it's assigned to? This is pulling from your employee dimension. You have a start date. Okay, it should start at the first of the month, and you have maybe, in this case, 13 days to get all this done. And this is just closing AP. That's very generous for closing AP. Shouldn't normally doesn't take that long. And then you can do constraints, like what are here are the choices. We can't change those choices. You can start or on or after the first of the month, and you have to finish by whatever. So you can get very granular with the assignments. Once you have the assignment set up, then you can add it to the checklist. And you're like, okay, that's fine. This is the one for February 2021, but we're now in 2024. Well, if you like this, you can duplicate it and just update the dates and potentially update the staff members. You can reuse, you don't have to create the proverbial wheel from the get-go. You can reuse a lot of this information. Think of it like whatever. I always had certain month-end procedures. I always had to make sure that these journal entries were done, the accruals were done, the depreciation was logged, etc. That doesn't mean you have to do it all manually, because a lot of this can be automated. But you just want to make sure that, okay, check this is done, check this is done, check this is done, so you don't forget a detail. That's what checklists are really, really good for. And to assign permission to checklists, if you have access to security roles, if I go to, let's go, I'm just going to go to all rights role. If I go to company permissions, checklists are at the bottom of company permissions. It starts right here and it goes all the way down here. So if you are interested in starting with checklists, give yourself security rights to the appropriate checklist areas, and then you'll be able to see it under company and then all tab. Okay. All right. So let me go one more thing. With that, you have been very, very good. Are there any questions? I've been rambling on too long. I'm gonna, are there any questions? We have a few minutes left. No questions? Hang on, there's questions. Okay, really good question. Is Collaborate included with the base subscription, or is there an additional fee? Collaborated is included free of charge with every production database. So Collaborate cannot be turned on in the sandbox or in implementation, but it's definitely can be turned on in the production database, and it's free of charge. So if you don't see Collaborate and you would like to see it, let us know and we'll be happy to turn it on for you. I'm gonna in chat. Where is chat? Hang on a second. I'm gonna put my email address in chat. So you can either reach out to myself or to Kristen. Give me a few days to respond, please, because it's a little hectic right now. And I think I put it in the right chat. Nope, I put it in the wrong chat. Sorry. Now, there is my email address. Let us know, either Kristen or myself or both, and we'll turn it on and give you a quick overview. When you turn it on, when we initially turn it on, we do have to wait for Intact to come back and say, okay, it's been enabled, because it's not instantaneous. So all that to say is, like, we can't schedule a quick 15-minute phone call, turn it on and walk you through it, because it literally is that fast. We have to wait for Intact to let us know that it has been enabled once we've turned on the flag. Okay. So that is collaborate. And the next one is, if you were following along in Intact but missed polls as a result, is there any way to know how many polls that person might have missed? That would be a Kristen question. Do you know, Kristen?
I can check and I'll reach out to you after the webinar.
Good answer. Okay, any other questions? If not, then we will let you go. Kristen, anything else?
Nope, not on my end.
Okay, well, thank you all very much. Again, reach out to us if you have any questions or if you want Collaborate turned on. All right, thank you. Have a good afternoon.